Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got an interesting show for you. Oh, yeah. Yep. Suspension. It seems like it's on its way. I don't know if it's going to be 4 weeks, if it's going to be indefinite. We're going to talk all about that. And we're definitely going to talk about Shane Beamer channeling his inner Butch Jones. Because I tell you what, he says some of the things that remind me so much of Butch. It's unbelievable at times. It's really quite amazing.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
Yep, everything's fine, so don't even worry about it. And we're going to talk about Michigan. This is on Yahoo Sports. Says NCAA revealed Michigan findings to the Big Ten. And the conference is mulling the Jim Harbaugh suspension. This is by Ross Dellinger and Dan Wetzel. And this is surprising to me that NCAA is already getting involved. Said they had revealed its latest findings in the Michigan sign stealing investigation, and they gave that to the Big Ten, as the conference is obviously considering a multi-game suspension or possibly an indefinite suspension. And Michigan is going to fight them. Said the school is gearing up for legal action. And it says the NCAA findings did not connect the in-person scouting and recording of opponents' sidelines to Harbaugh, which, because there's an absence of evidence, is essential to a potential lawsuit from the school and coach against the league. So that's pretty interesting. It says over the weekend, the school was given a period of several days in which to mount a response. And that's where the Big Ten sent them a notice of allegations, and they've got like 48 hours, and that was on Monday. So I think they'll respond probably Wednesday. Now, I don't know if they'll announce a suspension on Wednesday or if they'll wait till Thursday. It's hard to say. Depending on the length of the suspension, Michigan almost certainly is going to sue. And that's what I'm reading about and hearing about, especially from this article as well. And these are very credible journalists. And here they say, yeah, as soon as Wednesday. And Tony Petitti actually had gone to Michigan and talked to their president and tried to get them to do it themselves, a suspension. And I believe it was Ono. He said no. Or Ono said no. And, of course, the reason they're looking to sue is to get an injunction because, look, they're 9-0. They got a chance to go to the college football playoff. They got a chance at a national championship. So they're not going to let that go. They know there's only so many opportunities to win a natty. And it's been since, I think, 97 since they won one or shared one. So they're not going to let that go. Plus, they know once the suspension hits, look, at some point, I think Harbaugh is going to head to the NFL. And he's probably, the NCAA's, they're going to hit him with a show cause. That's my opinion. And I know the Michigan fans are going to get upset at me saying that. But that's what they do.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse.
They gave our guy, Jeremy Pruitt, a 5-year show cause. So what do you think they're going to do with this? It's probably going to be a 3 to 5 year show cause. There's almost no way around it because it has to do with institutional control or lack thereof. And the head coach, look, they're going to punish the coaches. That's what they're going to do. They've shown you their hand. They don't like punishing the kids, obviously, or the school. Now, if the school backs Jim Harbaugh and sues the NCAA or the Big Ten, they're going to take that into consideration, and they'll probably really hammer the school. Now, they're going to get some scholarship reductions for sure. You can just kind of count on that. That seems to be the thing they like to do, and a big fine. But if they back Jim Harbaugh to the max, it'll probably be worse. And here's the thing. The fine is no big deal to a school like Michigan. The scholarship reductions, they'll do that over a bunch of years. It won't be that big a deal. But the show cause is going to force them to go get a coach, which is what they're going to have to do eventually. You just can't have this. I don't see how he survives this. Now, I understand them wanting to hold on to the guy because he's been successful. But he's not going to have Connor Stallions anymore telling him the signs or the signals. So he's probably going to return back to a 70% win percentage, which is good, but it's not good enough at Michigan. They want what they're used to over the last 2.5 years. And Michigan's playing Penn State on Saturday, which is a top 10 meeting. It's going to be their toughest game, and they're having to play at Penn State. So that is a tough game. And then they got the big game with Ohio State. And it talks about how this sign-stealing thing's a multi-year endeavor to scout and record opponents. Connor Stallions, who failed to cooperate with NCAA last week, was dismissed, according to sources, or that he resigned. And Stallions was believed to have used as many as 65 associates. 65? Are you kidding me?
You cannot be serious!
You're going to use 65 associates and you think that's going to be kept under wraps? That's crazy. That makes no sense. How can you possibly think that's going to be kept under wraps? Oh, boy. It says, while sign stealing is not against NCAA rules, scouting a future opponent's game is, as well as using recording devices to document signals, which they did with their smartphones. And Petitti, which is the commissioner of the Big Ten, he is under intense pressure from all the other Big Ten schools, especially the head coaches. They are furious. I mean, they could not be angrier. And they were yelling and screaming in a Zoom meeting with him, and one of them was crying. I mean, it was like bad. Because he was feeling bad for, I guess, the kids that had lost. And see, that's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, well, you know, there's no real harm done. Well, what about the kids that worked really hard at the other Big Ten schools, and they lost games because of this? And so they didn't get to go to the bowl games and do all these things that they wanted to do that they earned, and it was stolen from them. So that's the reason why they're upset, which makes perfect sense. I tell you, if somebody had my signs and I was the head coach of another team, I would be flat out in his face. I'd be screaming at him. I would have been in the Zoom call screaming at him, because that's not, you cannot do that. Anyway, that's probably why I'm not a head coach. That, and I wouldn't know what I was doing either. So, you know, little details. And it talks about how in Ann Arbor, Friday, Petitti, he proposed a multi-game suspension, and we talked about that. Said President Santa Ono pushed back against it. And he said in a letter to Petitti, publicized over the weekend, that he expressed his desire for the conference to wait until the NCAA completes its investigation before levying any penalties. So in other words, just wait a couple of years, because that's usually what it takes, 2 years for the NCAA to come out with whatever they're going to do. And realize that whenever there's a response, they have like 30 days to respond back. I've been through all this with UT and Jeremy Pruitt. This is a long process. And when they do send the letter of allegations and all that stuff, there's this huge time frame of response and then counter and response. And before you know it, a year's gone by in a heartbeat. So I can understand why Santa Ono definitely wants to do that. Oh, let's just do due process. It'll be just fine. Next thing you know, Jim Harbaugh's played 2 seasons and he's moved on to the NFL and totally forgotten about it. That's a pretty good plan, actually, by Ono. But I don't think it's going to work. And it talks about how any Big Ten penalty would be rooted in the sportsmanship policy, which allows the commissioner to hand down discipline measures for violating the integrity of competition, etc. The commissioner can take disciplinary actions considered standard or major. The standard action includes a fine not exceeding $10,000, a suspension of no more than 2 contests. So he can do the 2-game deal, and there's nothing in Michigan really do about that. Now, if they go with a 4-game, which we're hearing, that's when Michigan probably brings in the attorneys and tries to get an injunction, which I don't think would be that hard to get. Just go to, a judge in Michigan who is elected. You think he's going to rule against Michigan football? You'd have to be crazy. You might as well turn in his robe if he did that. So I think getting an injunction would be
super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Exactly. Very easy. It says major action is anything exceeding those penalties, and they have to have a Big Ten executive board of presidents. They'd have to have a vote. That would be obviously if they're trying to do the 4-game as well. They asked Greg Sankey of the SEC, and he said, I don't wish that on anyone. And he's sitting there going, God, I am so glad this is not the SEC and I'm not embroiled in this. That's the last thing you want. Because, look, we need to leave Alabama alone and South Carolina. Yeah, I went there. And it talks about how any suspension is going to be met with legal action from both coach and school. I think if they did 2 games, he would leave it alone. Who knows, though? They may have just dug in their heels. And I think it depends also on this Penn State game. Now, if he loses to Penn State, they're probably out of the college football playoff or really in a bad spot. So they might, especially if they lost to Penn State and Ohio State. I think they would just let the chips fall where they may. But if he wins at Penn State, they're going to dig their heels in even more. And then it talks about in order to get a temporary restraining order, the school or Harbaugh would have to present a cause of action. That could be a lack of due process claim or a failure to follow procedural rules. And again, that falls back to, hey, they didn't link me directly to Connor Stallions and me having knowledge of that. That would be the finding they would fall back on. And then it gets into the granting of a TRO, which would be the restraining order, could reinstate Harbaugh until a more permanent decision is made from the courts, which that could take a long, long, long time. And it says the NCAA, there's little to no precedent for this case. Years ago, it talks about some things that happened. And it talks about how the NCAA takes so long that there's no way there'd be any penalties during the season. And it talks about how the NCAA, it spans months, if not years. We talked about that. So it's pretty obvious how this is going to play out. I think they're going to come out with most likely a 4-game suspension, and then Michigan's going to go find a judge and get a temporary restraining order, and then this thing's just going to get murky and murky and murky. And there'll be more allegations come out, more facts will be found, and journalists are all over this. I'm telling you, they are going to find everything they can find. You can count on it because this is the biggest story in college currently and probably in the last 10 or 20 years. It's just absolutely huge. I've never seen anything to equal it. It's just kind of shocking. It's going to lead to helmets with microphones. That's what it's going to lead to because that'll just clean it all up. But something needs to be done. It almost has to be. So this is going to get very interesting over the next several days. And I'm going to be watching it closely. I'm sure you will be too. All right, now I've got to get into the Shane Beamer thing. And you need to hear what he had to say. It is so Butch Jones. I mean, when I heard it, I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way you just said this crap. All right, and this was posted, let's see. I'm not a Twitter expert, but Gamecock John, and then this was obviously somebody, Landon Raby, and he said, blessed to have Josh Heupel and not this guy. So let's let you hear what he has to say.
We are going to celebrate the heck out of this game. And we just had one heck of a celebration in that locker room, and our guys are super excited and dancing their butts off. And they're going to be people that just live a miserable existence that are going to say, why are you celebrating a 10-point win over Jacksonville State? Well, that's why you're not on a team. And that's why you're not on in a locker room like that, because our guys work really, really hard during the week. And we know we need to be better, starting with me. I thought we coached poorly today in a lot of ways. So we'll be better, but this game is too hard, and we get 12 guaranteed Saturdays, and these kids work their freaking butts off, and proud as heck of them to find a way to win with a lot of the mistakes that we made. So when you win, you get 12 guaranteed. We're not like Major League Baseball where you get 162 games, or basketball where you get 40 games or 30 games. We get 12, and when we win, we're gonna celebrate.
Now, how that should have been said was, look, that was a close ball game. Jacksonville State's a good team. We are celebrating this victory, but it's not good enough. We've only won 3 times this year. These are kids. I'm going to let them enjoy it. But come Monday, we're going to hit that practice field and we're going to get better. And that's what we try to do every day. And unfortunately, it's just not been happening to the level that our fans expect or that we expect as coaches. And the comment about people that live a miserable existence and all that crap, that's the unnecessary part that really brings people down on you. And they're going to launch on you on Twitter. You can just count on it, and which is what they're doing. So it's just Shane's going to be Shane, Butch is going to be Butch. But the similarities are hard not to notice. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to let up on this sign-stealing thing when it comes to South Carolina either. And I've laid out my whole circumstantial evidence case, which you've seen many times. I won't go over every single part of it in this because I've already done it so many times. You can watch one of my previous videos where if you see Shane Beamer's face, I'm sure I'm talking about it. But those 2 victories over Tennessee and Clemson are so out of sorts of the norm of what South Carolina has done over the last 2 years. I mean, they were playing poorly leading into those 2 games, and they've played poorly ever since. So none of that makes any sense. It's like you don't just walk into a calculus class and all of a sudden get 100 and then another 100 and then go back to being a D student. I'm sorry, that's not how it works.
I'd unfriend you.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Football is not dissimilar. You've got to be at a high level to take down 2 top 10 teams. And let's just see how many top 10 teams they've beaten since those 2 wins, or top 20 or top 30 or top 40. Because we know they've been, 3-7 since those 2 top 10 wins. Let's see, they beat Furman. Let's see where Furman is. Oh, that's right. They wouldn't be on this list. Well, let's look at Jacksonville State. They beat them. Let's see. They're number 73 in the country. So they beat a top 80 team since they took down 2 top 10 teams. And let's see. They also won, who was it they beat? Mississippi State. That's their 3rd victory they've had since that epic 2-game series. There's Mississippi State right there, number 64. So what am I thinking that's weird that they beat 2 top 10 teams? That's not weird. They've already taken down a top 70 and a top 80 since then out of 10 games. Seems reasonable to me. So obviously I'm way off. You got to be kidding me. So you're telling me you've not beaten a top 60 team in the last 10 ball games? But yeah, we beat 2 top 10 teams, no problem. Forget about all this circumstantial evidence, a person with direct knowledge that said that Connor Stalions Michigan had reached out to possible opponents of the college football playoff, and South Carolina getting ready to play against two of them, which was Tennessee and Clemson, and that they were looking to knock possibly some of those teams off their playoff path to clear a path for Michigan. Connor Stalions would never do that. He only had 65 people working for him. Anyway, I'm going to stay on top of that because I think, look, you can call it a conspiracy if you want, and I can't prove it, and it is a rumor. I understand that. But I tell you what, there's a lot of smoke. So anyway, did want to cover this today. I think they're going to do a 4-week suspension, not the indefinite, but we may be surprised. Either way, I think there'll be legal action immediately, and I think they will get a temporary restraining order on that. I think they will. And as far as Shane Beamer's concerned, look, he can't help but channel Butch Jones. He just can't. And it's not the first time he's done this. He's done it many, many times. It's what he does. He gets in front of a microphone, his emotions get the better of him, and he starts champions of life, brick by brick. That's what it is. So anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me know to continue to cover SEC, Big Ten, my Vols, a whole bunch of interesting stuff. And if you've not subscribed, all you got to do is hit this little button right here. It'll help you get my videos. And I'm going to stay on top of this stuff. I'll just go ahead and tell you. So if you want to see what's happening and you want it in a brief YouTube type video, just hit this little button right here and it'll send it to you. It'll make it easy. It'll be on your feed. And it doesn't cost you a penny. And right over here's the most recent video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy based on your viewing history. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.